filibuster, interestingly enough, even though today we think it's a constitutional principle, it's not. One of the great scholars of this subject, Sarah Binder from George Washington University and Brookings, has written a lot about this. And it almost happens as an accident that both the House and Senate start with rules that allow the majority to cut off debate, allow majorities to really make decisions. But by the early 19th century, around 1806, the Senate starts to shift course and basically alter the rules, not thinking through how it will affect the institution, but opening the door for a senator to keep talking and making it very difficult to stop them. Essentially, no rule where the majority can say, shut up, sit down, you're done. And by the mid-19th century, you're starting to see more of this talking and more of these efforts to obstruct what the majority wants to do. People don't have an exact date for the first filibuster. It's often dated to 1841, although I've seen that disputed as well. And then the next big moment comes in 1917. This is really when the modern filibuster is born, because President Woodrow Wilson is frustrated with a group of senators who are filibustering his legislation to arm ships that are going to be involved in the conflict, the war taking place in Europe. And Wilson is furious, and he talks about this group of senators that's holding up the business. And his allies create this rule, Rule 22, called cloture. And it says that 2/3 of the Senate can vote to stop a filibuster. So 2/3 of the Senate, if you can get that, that's a supermajority, can vote to say Senator A and Senator A's allies, they're done. They can't hold up the legislation any longer. So after that time, you have a filibuster. It's used sporadically. It's not used all the time. Most of the business of the Senate through the 1970s is done by majority vote, including very controversial issues like Medicare in 1965. And the filibuster is primarily between 1917 and say 1964. It's a tool that's deployed by Southern conservatives in the Democratic Party who work with Republican allies to stop civil rights bills. And basically, Northern liberals could not get 2/3 of the Senate to come on board with civil rights legislation. And this is why a lot of civil rights organizations in the 1950s and early 1960s prioritize filibuster reform. They think that if you don't have filibuster reform, you're never going to get civil rights legislation. And many liberals, such as Hubert Humphrey, a senator from Minnesota who's elected in 1948, make filibuster reform a central topic throughout this period. They want to have a majority vote, that if you get a majority, filibuster is over. You finally get filibuster reform in 1975 when the Democratic Congress, working with Vice President Nelson Rockefeller, can't get a majority system. But what they do get is they reduce the number from 2/3 to 3/5 of the Senate, which is essentially 67 to 60 votes, which is something. It's seen as a victory. And they also create in this period a 2-track system, meaning a filibuster can be happening, but the Senate can still work on other issues, which before was not possible. But the history of the filibuster since 75 went in a very different direction than reformers hoped for. What we have now seen is filibustering becoming a normal tool of partisan politics. And filibusters happen all the time, not just on high-profile legislation, but on almost anything. Budget legislation, personal bills that one senator puts up that another senator wants to stop. And the result has been, until 2013, really a 60-vote rule in the Senate, where you need 60 votes on almost any bill. That's what the parties expect, anticipate, and believe to be normal. And then finally, we've had some filibuster reform again. In 2013, the Democrats under Senator Harry Reid are so frustrated with how Republicans are holding up President Obama's judicial confirmations that they get rid of the filibuster. It was called the nuclear option for federal judges, not the Supreme Court, and other federal appointees. And then a few years later, when President Trump is in office, Republicans do away with the filibuster for Supreme Court nominations. So we still have the filibuster. It no longer applies to the courts, and it no longer applies to federal appointees. And it's become really a big part of congressional politics, which again is amazing because it wasn't part of the original design. It shows how this institution evolves in dramatic ways.